For some reason, I recently decided to rewatch one of the coolest movies of all time, Predator. I've always enjoyed it, but for some reason this time around, the film absolutely blew me away. Everything about it was just top tier. And one thing that I really wasn't ready for and had never fully appreciated until now was just how freaking incredible the photography was. And it got me thinking, why is the photography in Predator so outstanding? From the very beginning of this movie, we can see that Predator is playing no games in the visual department. The great Don McAlpine was brought on to photograph this movie, and honestly, he could be credibly described as a genius for what he achieved here. Don also shot classics like Mrs. Doubtfire, which, by the way, he did an amazing job on. The fact that you probably never thought about the photography in that film is evidence of that. Parenthood, another awesome movie.
Damn, that looked good too.
The Harrison Ford Jack Ryan movies were photographed by him, and even a couple of Baz Luhrmann's films were, making him a prolific and very, very interesting artist. But for my money, as amazing as his portfolio is, Predator, god damn, it really is a masterpiece of cinema. Now, from the off, it's really important to understand and appreciate that creating a movie is a hideously complex and chaotic endeavor. Even with all the planning in the world, as soon as you start production, problems emerge that you could never have even fathomed. Great directors and filmmakers, along with being great artists and creatives, have to be extraordinary problem solvers. And this is the case in the best of times, but shooting on location reduces the amount of control over the environment and massively increases the chaos. Thus, deciding to shoot Predator in the Mexican jungle was simply a gargantuan undertaking. But to my mind, one problem stands out from all the others. How on earth do you even shoot here? Remember that this film was made in the mid to late 80s and shot on 35mm film. It's not like today where digital photography makes it relatively easy to get instantaneous feedback as to what you're actually photographing. On Predator, the changing season forced them even further into the jungle, to the point that they were 1,000 miles away from Mexico City, meaning that there was a 4-day round trip for the dailies to make it back to the city, get developed, and arrive back on set, and they could get some sense of what it was they were actually filming. This profound logistical hurdle had massive creative implications, but as I said before, the best filmmakers are outstanding problem solvers. And this meant that Don had to rely on his expertise and his instinct in order to make sure the shot was being exposed properly. This would be a huge challenge on set with carefully controlled lighting. But here in the jungle, they were completely at the mercy of the natural environment. But this chaos did not simply generate problems, it also generated and offered extraordinary opportunities. And rather than shy away from the challenge of shooting in a jungle, Don and the team ran straight at it, tackling the problems as they came, and embracing the natural beauty and lighting whenever it revealed itself. So what does this all mean for the final film? Well, it means that no one could ever have truly set out to make Predator. Sometimes when we encounter a magnificent piece of art, be it a film, a piece of music, even a YouTube video, we're struck by its brilliance and left wondering how anyone could have ever realized something so extraordinary. And often, of course, we feel a bit inadequate by comparison. But the truth is, great artists almost never end up making exactly what they set out to. They don't perfectly conceive this concept and then realize it. They begin with an idea and then start working, discovering, adapting, and responding to the process as it unfolds. Bit by bit, they build something that they couldn't have imagined when they set out. And Predator is a textbook example of that. A film born not from strict, rigorous planning that was then executed, but from creative adaptation, problem solving, and instinct. Now, Predator begins as a classic macho 80s power movie, a rogues gallery of era-defining male energy. I mean, just look at this. It's so simple, but that's McAlpine's genius on display, turning Arnold into a kind of mythical figure. And it just looks so damned good, and crucially, it hits you on a really emotional level. It starts with that familiar Vietnam War adjacent setup, a covert exfiltration mission deep in the jungle. But before long, the tables turn, and the Predator starts hunting them. And as this happens, the film shifts into something far more suspenseful, bordering on horror, before reaching its primal final act. And the story isn't just told through plot, it's told through everything. Alan Silvestri's just extraordinary music, the performances from the actors, the editing, and perhaps most importantly, through the photography. Now, during the intro, we get the beautiful, gritty interiors where the lighting can be controlled, made as cinematic as they want, and we get those beautiful interactions. And from here, the team sets off and is in the helicopter, again with some really cool shots, before they're dropped into the jungle on the macho commando mission. Now, throughout this opening act, many of the scenes are shot on shorter lenses, giving us that wide-angle view that helps us establish the geography and keeps the visual storytelling nice and clear. We get a very strong sense of space, movement, and team dynamics. There's plenty of visual information flowing to the viewer at all times, with McAlpine taking full advantage of everything the jungle is offering up. It's just beautiful, reverent photography. Just check out some of these stills from this part of the film. I mean, just look at this. It's extraordinary stuff. And this part of the movie culminates in the assault on the guerrilla base, a chaotic, explosive set piece captured through a dynamic mix of wide shots, close-ups, many of which are still filmed with the wide lenses, but there are longer lenses in the mix too, used sparingly to punch in for that dramatic effect. It's loud, messy, and intense, but it's at this point that the film takes a kind of right turn. Dutch realizes that Dylan had lied to them, and the tone of the film begins to shift. Now, as the team begins to move back through the forest, the predator begins hunting them. The suspense and horror that had only been hinted at earlier now takes center stage and is ratcheted up with every step. Interestingly, due to the nature of the predator's invisibility technology, it was clear from the outset that very serious visual effects work would be required to realize this creature. Because of this, the studio forbade Don from shooting using anamorphic lenses, commonly favored in cinematic action films due to the way they distort the image. At the time, anamorphic lenses would squeeze a widescreen image onto standard 35mm film by optically distorting it. The image would then be unsqueezed in projection or post-production to achieve that glorious widescreen look we all associate with big cinematic storytelling. However, this distortion creates complications for visual effects. To integrate effects seamlessly, the VFX artists would have needed to replicate that unique lens distortion, a feat that was virtually impossible in the mid-80s. As a result, Don was required to shoot with spherical lenses instead. But what could have been a limitation actually turned out to be a blessing. They also allowed him to shoot at faster apertures, since their simpler internal design lets more light reach each frame of film. That meant cleaner image quality and greater flexibility when working with the limited, unpredictable light of the jungle. It gave the film a grounded, gritty realism that helped define its iconic look. As such, rather than the traditional anamorphic widescreen, it was presented in the 1:851 aspect ratio. It still looks cinematic as hell, and on a modern display, it just looks freaking beautiful. Now, a lot of this section is shot on longer lenses, which naturally restrict the field of view in order to better concentrate on the subject of the shot. And in this case, it has the incredible effect of enhancing the tension of the moment. We're not so able to maintain a sense of what's going on around the characters. Lens choice ends up being critical in establishing that emotional mood, and Don's choices here are masterful. A few more stills for your enjoyment. Now consider what the team was dealing with. All the way through, they have the canopy of the jungle acting like a massive light diffuser. One moment, light is pouring on the scene, whereas a few seconds later, it's almost completely blocked out. You get in position, start the take, and after having moved a few feet, everything now looks completely flat. But likewise, a setup that might have been envisaged looking a certain way now looks a million times more dramatic because of how that light was falling at that particular moment. Likewise, the natural lighting conditions of the jungle made it extremely difficult to set up any additional lighting. Even in the best of circumstances, making artificial light look natural is not easy. And in an environment like this, it was practically impossible. So while Don did occasionally use artificial light, of course, he worked primarily with what he had. He placed the camera where the light looked good and blocked scenes based on what the jungle was offering in that moment. He and the team weren't trying to fight the environment, they embraced it, whether it was cooperating or not. Thus, as I mentioned earlier, Don really did have to rely on his technique and his instinct when exposing the film. And yet what he produced was not only usable, it was beautiful. I mean, just look at this. What do you even say? This is just cinematic storytelling at its most exquisite. And fundamentally, perhaps this is why the photography in Predator just feels so freaking amazing. It just has an authenticity about it, like that kind of grittiness, that realism, that tangible feel that is honestly lacking in a lot of modern blockbusters. So much of this film is just men with big guns walking through a jungle. Maybe it's because I'm a 34-year-old male for whom this sort of storytelling is like a fever dream, but the storytelling just works. And obviously as the film progresses, the Predator becomes a more prominent part. The blend of its invisibility cloak with the extreme violence and the sound design, the noises that it's making, it makes for incredible cinema. And eventually, we get to the point where only Dutch is left. And the final act of the film is him making his primal last stand. Now, this part was shot in a different location to the rest of the film, taking place over a river canyon near Palenque, Mexico. To simulate the moonlight, the gaffer, Warren Mearns, rigged a huge bank of dino lights atop a waterfall. But even with that, it was barely enough light, especially for 35mm film. As a result, Don shot this final sequence wide open at T2 on the fast Zeiss lenses that he was pairing with the Panavision camera. Having the aperture wide open lets in the maximum amount of light, but it also creates a very shallow depth of field, making it more difficult to focus on the subject. But it was a necessary trade-off. As a result, this sequence is very, very dark, with backgrounds fading to black, but goddammit, it just looks so good. Even here, with just the campfire illuminating Arnold's face, I mean, just look at that. That is cinema right there. Martin Scorsese would approve of that shot. Supposedly, they built a propane campfire so they could actually control the intensity of the flame and have a bit of creativity to it without actually having to constantly throw more wood onto it. And it is here that we finally, after all the build-up and suspense, get to see the Predator in all its creepy beauty. And I don't really know what to say, to be honest. I look back at the very minor amount of insight we have gone through here, and I feel like it barely even scratches the surface of, the story of what it took to realize this movie. And fundamentally, the reason that the photography in Predator is so outstanding is simply because of how it makes us feel when we experience the movie. The fact they succeeded in shooting at anything, to me, is mind-blowing. And it is absolutely a product of its time for that reason. There is simply no way at all that Predator could be made in 2025, as the creative and logistical challenges could be solved too easily on a computer, that no studio would ever finance such a absurdly complicated production. Even with digital cameras, I just don't think it would happen. Thus, let's take a minute to enjoy this awesome movie. And rather than complain that they don't make them like they used to, or whatever, let's just appreciate the fact that there was a time when they did. Well, I'd like to thank you once again for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed that look back at yet another awesome movie. Watching the 4K 2022 release of Predator, I think I actually watched it on Disney Plus, was the thing that just changed the game for me, because it's such an outstanding 4K upscale that it really, really just changed how I felt about the photography in that movie. So if you haven't checked it out yet, definitely go and have a look at the 2022 release, not the 2018 one, which is just a disgrace. And I think that's the one that's being streamed on Disney Plus at the moment, because it just looks amazing. And that film grain, you might have seen it in the stills that I shared, but that film grain is just mwah. Now, as I said in the previous video, I'm currently working on a pretty epic video focused on the history of video game music, focusing specifically on a particular legend in that space. So if that's something you think might be interested in, definitely click subscribe. And if you enjoyed this video, please click like, because it really does help the channel out, and it just makes it more viable for me to spend more time telling cool stories on this channel. So with that, I want to thank you very, very much for stopping. Thank you for watching until the end, and I hope to see you in the next one. Have a great day, and see you soon.